Hi, I'm Parker Dahl, and welcome to So What, a place where I answer the question that so many of my students want to ask. How are you always so right? I guess some of my students might also ask, so what? I'm leaving. Today we will talk about the age of absolutism. During this time period, monarchs will seek to gain as much power as possible. They will do this by both increasing their power and decreasing the power of their opponents. This will certainly happen between different countries, but it will also happen within countries, wherein monarchs will reduce the power of the nobles, dismiss representative bodies, and centralize religions underneath their leadership. The idea behind all of these moves is for those monarchs to become sovereign.
Hey, Del,
No.
What?
No, you don't get to speak.
But you don't know what?
You're going to say, you will come up with some quippy remark about how silly all this is. Like, absolute monarchs aren't a big deal today. The only thing you're informing people about is how boring you are.
Maybe I was going to say that, but...
But what? You want to say, so what? That's right, now I have that power, and I'm going to explain why you should care, in 3 main points. First, the pursuit of sovereignty will result in political centralization. Second, political centralization will result in more competition. And third, competition will encourage the growth of a worldwide economic trade network. Let us begin by talking about this first point, and how the pursuit of sovereignty will result in political centralization. Monarchs will push to become the central figure of government with all of the authority. The archetypical example for this is France's Louis XIV. He will reduce the power of both the church and the nobility within France. He will go on to create ceremonies for everyday activities, like simply walking the king to breakfast. The nobility will actually clamor at the opportunity to be able to do these mundane tasks because they saw it as an opportunity to get close to that king. In many ways, this should show you how elevated the nobility treated Louis. It's no wonder that courts all across Europe tried to mimic what was happening in France, because everyone wanted to be on that same level, which is why French became the language of courts all across of Europe. This larger-than-life image will go on to influence more absolutists to strive for more power, in many ways ensuring that people will seek out this glory forevermore. The issue with seeking glory is that everyone feels like they're the chosen one. Not only will other monarchs seek to rise to such prosperous heights, but many members of the nobility will have a lot of problems with their power being diminished. This is what happens with the rise of absolutism under the Stuart dynasty in England. Charles will disband Parliament for 20 years, only to call them back to ask for more funds. Parliament will see its opportunity and say that it will only issue any new funds on the basis of some reform that would limit the monarch's ability to do this. The result of which is an English civil war, while the parliamentary faction, the Roundheads, will end up prevailing in this war by ultimately beheading their king, Charles I. They'll have to ask the question that every rebellion has to ask eventually. What now? They will set up a protectorate under the war hero Oliver Cromwell, which ultimately will become more of a military dictatorship. This all brings me to my second point. Political centralization will result in more competition. As these nations centralize their governments, they will then move on to compete on a grander scale. Louis XIV will discover a more efficient way of collecting taxes. In the old system, royal agents would go and farm taxes from all across the country, but they would also take a lot off the top for themselves. This resulted in only about a quarter of the money actually ever reaching the king. Well, under the reforms that Louis will actually institute, he's going to be pulling in 4/5 of that expected tax revenue, which is a huge increase. But why are we talking about tax revenue? Well, you see, with France solving this internal funding problem, it allows for them to set their sights on foreign goals, like getting a foothold on that spice trade happening in the Indian Ocean. Only problem here, both England and the Dutch have far superior naval capabilities. Luckily, Louis has an idea. He'll partner up with England to attack the Dutch. This way, one of the two is going to be weakened by this exchange, so it's a win-win for France. The only problem here, England was going through a lot of changes. While they had restored the monarchy, there was still a lot of apprehension about the idea of an absolute monarch rising to the throne. There was so much fear about this, actually, that they will invite the Stadtholder of the Netherlands, William III, to come and be the new king of England. The Glorious Revolution will not only result in the limiting of power of the monarchy, but it will also turn the tides against France, because now you have both England and the Dutch who are able to team up together, thus crushing Louis's dreams of ever gaining a foothold in that worldwide trade.
Okay, but you're only talking about France and England. You do know there are other countries in Europe, right?
Absolutely. Prussia will become an absolute monarchy that pushes for the rise of militarism. Russia will also become an absolute monarchy that uses this centralized power to force westernization on the Russian people. The Netherlands will continue to be a republic, but will struggle to rebuild their economy following the warfare caused by Louis XIV. The reason we talk so much about England and France is because in a lot of ways they perfectly illustrate the philosophical difference that was developing at this time. What form of government should exist, and what duty does it have to its people?
Oh, come on. What do you know about the questions of government? More than that, what do you know about philosophy? It's not like you have some title that would make you an authority on the matter. What? Do you have a title? Then why are you smiling? Oh, no. You know someone who does. Am I going to regret challenging you on this? Okay, proceed.
Here to respond to the inquest regarding the philosophical purpose of government, allow me to introduce Duke of Dahlia the Third. In order to answer the question at hand, we must recognize that there are two different individuals worthy of our consideration in this matter. One is Thomas Hobbes, who wrote the Leviathan, living through the worst parts of the English Civil War. Hobbes posits that in order to examine the purpose of government, we must first imagine life without that government. He calls this the state of nature, and in his writings, he notes that the state of nature would be nothing but a state of perpetual warfare, seeing individuals acting selfishly, fighting each other for food and shelter, because they expect everyone else to also be as selfish as they are. Under this state of nature, life would be nasty, brutish, and short. In order to stop humanity from destroying itself, Hobbes argues that the people need a Leviathan, a government that is strong enough to not only protect them from outside threats, but to protect them from themselves. And the only way to do this is to have a strong monarch who can create a lawful society.
Okay, but what does Hobbes think about a monarch who has abused his power, like Dahl?
Hobbes would say that the people just need to live with it and trust the process. He did not advocate or believe in any type of rebellion against the king. For a rebellious society is not a peaceful society.
So I'm supposed to sit back and wait. Man, philosophy's no fun.
You give up too quickly. Perhaps this is why Dahl is always besting you. For while Hobbes will defend absolutism as just, philosophy is all about the discussion. John Locke will enter the discussion, and he has a very different point of view. Locke lived through the Glorious Revolution, which played a big part in the crafting of his two treatises of government. In this document, he will accept Hobbes' challenge on evaluating government on the basis of the state of nature. And it is here that Locke will first disagree with Hobbes. For he says that people are not inherently evil, and they will not simply kill each other because they're scared. Each one of us is born with an innate sense of morality, and that morality tells us that life is the most important thing. Locke will attribute this to God, and will further use this to explain why people have a right to life. More than that, people have the liberty to improve that life. And the best way for a person to protect those first two rights is for them to secure property. The purpose of government is to protect these rights. Should the government infringe upon them in any way, then the people have the right to revolt. This is because of a concept known as the social contract.
Is it like those online user agreements? So? I didn't read it. Except.
This social contract is an agreement between the people and their government. The government agrees to protect its citizens, and the citizens agree to follow the laws instituted by the government. If either side should violate this social contract, then they forfeit their rights. This concept is the basis for most Western governments today. I hope this explanation was sufficient, Mr. Dahl. Please invite me back sometime, for I quite enjoy educating tall, babbling, bumbling buffoons. Thank you for clearing up that philosophical quandary. Now, to finish my argument with my third point. Competition will encourage the growth of a worldwide trade network. As mentioned previously, the French were trying to impact the trade market. The Dutch were going through a golden age, which was rooted in an economy that was based off of this domination of the spice trade. First, they're going to overtake the Portuguese and their trade holdings. And second, they're going to violently suppress any notion of rebellion within their overseas holdings. This would allow the Dutch to control the majority of marketable goods being shipped from the Indian Ocean. How was France to compete against countries who had superior naval capabilities? They would go on to institute a new system of economics known as mercantilism. Mercantilism sought for countries to become self-sufficient, meaning they would produce all the things that they needed by themselves. In order to do this, though, they need a lot of raw materials so they can have those finished goods. Where are they going to get all these materials from? Well, countries like France will get them from colonies. They will ship out these raw goods, take them, make them into something, and then send back the finished goods to those colonies to then sell them back to those people. What stops another country from coming in and selling their goods to compete, you might ask? Well, the answer is high tariffs. These high tariffs will increase the prices of those foreign imported goods, making it to where they just can't compete with the cheaper French option. This economic protectionism will see a closing off of trade between countries, but it will also encourage a Russian development for international colonial holdings, thus encouraging a pseudo-worldwide economic trade system.
What is the deal with the hats? Well, that was rude.
As you can clearly see, the age of absolutism saw monarchs that were wearing a lot of hats. They will consolidate their power and centralize government. These centralized governments will then go on to compete on a grander scale and push competition across the globe. This is just the beginning of how European competitions will change the political, economical, and philosophical landscape. Have a great day.
Dahl just took my property, which means I now have the right to rebel against him, according to Locke, that is. Although Hobbes does have some interesting ideas as well. What am I doing? Learning? There must be a way to use this knowledge against him. I will search through the different philosophers and find a way. Yes, I shall.
No, we will laugh.
What? But you can't do that.
Well, I just did. And I hereby institute an anticlimactic ending.